Just when we thought we had enough to unpack, Jacob Markstrom gives us more.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, joined by my partner in crime, Nick Zararis. Nick, how are you doing today?
It's Friday. I'm terrific.
It's Friday. We're recording at 5 o'clock. The typical work week's done, and now we get to have all the fun one can have in a matter of 2 days. But before we dive into everything, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today, we're going to talk all about Jacob Markstrom's comments about how he doesn't really appreciate how the Flames management went about things with this trade, and continuing the discussion surrounding Chris Tanev's trade and leverage. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. We are officially 1 week away from the trade deadline, so you don't want to miss an episode. I appreciate how honest Markstrom was today.
It's very infrequent you don't get smoke blown by these guys because they try and maintain a decorum. They try and be as nondescript as possible by design. You know, they get their individuality stamped out of them so they can't cause any issues for the team. And every now and then, one of these guys will speak up for themselves, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. They're people too."
Yeah, when I first read the quote, when he said, "I respect everyone in the room," and then went back and said, "I respect the players," I knew whatever the rest I was going to read was going to be the highlight of my day, unfortunately. But no, I really appreciate that, he really tried to do the Flames a favor and said, "Hey, if you get something, I'll consider it. I'll waive my no trade clause, and we can both, part ways." And no, it bit him in the butt.
You can't have it both ways, and we'll talk about that more later, but based on how they have handled everything else, you can gripe about the returns, you can gripe about who they've traded players to, but they've stuck to some semblance of a plan of, we are selling these guys to maximize their value, to get as much as we possibly can, because we know it's not going to happen for us this year. That's been the entire MO. So to reverse course on one player, and I get it, you don't want the last 20 games of this season to be a write-off. You don't want them to not mean anything for anyone. And going into the last 20 games of the season with a tandem of Vladar and Wolf, I understand why you wouldn't want to do that to a veteran team that's been competitive over the last month. Like I said, like yesterday, 7-3-10 in the month of February, played reasonably decent hockey, largely driven by the goaltending, but not only the goaltending. But if you take the team's best player out of the team, you are going to have a trickle-down effect. And that human element is what's keeping them from doing this, in my opinion. It's not the results. I don't think they care about the winning and losing. I think it's more, if they trade Markstrom, guys are going to stop trying, more or less.
Definitely. And I saw something today that I'm sure we'll touch on later more in depth, but Craig Conroy is kind of in this people-pleasing mode, it feels like. And I do feel bad because this is his first year and, you're bound to make mistakes. But, you have to think like a businessman. You have to, unfortunately, put those feelings aside and do what is best for your team moving forward. And just last week, we talked about how we finally have a clear-cut direction and how big it was for them to use the word rebuild. And now it just feels like we are back at square one, and there's no progress.
It's really frustrating. You want to say, hey, it's really frustrating on the outside looking in, especially because we don't have stakes the same way these people do.
No.
Ultimately, if you told the fan base, there are always going to be detractors who, no matter what, they're not going to be happy. But for the most part, if you come out and say, hey, we're doing this the right way, we have a plan, we're sticking to it. We're going to have to take our medicine right now, but eventually it's going to set us up to have a sustained period of success. We know that's not great for right now, but eventually when we're competitive again, it will have been worth it. So I think the level, I don't think Conroy's openness and his willingness to kind of talk things out has helped either. And we'll talk more about that later on, this idea of kind of laying all your cards out for everyone to see, more or less, which not great, but it's just frustrating because while I haven't loved these decisions and I haven't loved the returns, at least I understand what they're trying to do. There's a plan and they're sticking to it. And ultimately what I'm looking for from executives in sports is, do you have a plan and are you sticking to it? Because it's one thing to, trade one guy and then extend another one. Like, if you have a plan, execute it. Even if I don't agree with it, stick to your plan and convince me I was wrong.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, everyone just wants to win and be a competitive team. And I think Flames fans have suffered long enough. And it felt like we had finally turned over a new leaf with a new general manager and, just something fresh. And while he is trading players away, it just feels like very much like a Brad Treliving era where there's nothing. Like, you aren't taking steps. You aren't moving forward. You are just there. And that's not good enough.
No, I'm struggling to even articulate what I want to say because it just doesn't make sense.
No.
If you were willing to trade all of the other good players on this team who are expiring contracts and have good value, and I mean, coming into this season, we assumed Markstrom's contract was untradeable because of how bad he played last year.
Mm-hmm.
Sell at the top of his market. I jokingly saw somebody say that they're going to hold on to GameStop stock at $500 until it goes back down to zero. And that's kind of what it feels like. You've got an appreciated asset that 4 months ago you thought had no value, that you were going to be stuck with or you were going to have to buy out.
Yeah.
Now he's even given you the get out of jail free card where he said he would do it even though he originally didn't want to. That's what's, I get wanting to do right by the guys on the team. That's great. Then do better in your trades. Get roster players who are going to help the team right away.
Yeah, I'm not understanding, and I'm struggling to comprehend all of these decisions because, like you said, this was the get out of jail free card. And what happens when, October, November rolls around and we're going to be Monday morning quarterbacking this, saying, oh, well, they really should have traded. Like, yes, it shouldn't even be a second thought.
No, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't, from the perspective that it's not about right now. We have to delay the short-term gratification to get what we actually want. It's great they're winning hockey games. Saturday night's going to be really fun, but it's not about right now. It is about the future. If you want to sell the people, and that's the other thing, you're going to have to sell people on the team stinking for at least a year or two. If you start ramping up for that now and you ease people into the idea and sell it under the idea of, we're getting all these young guys, we're going to have all these draft picks, we are going to turn this roster over to be something you can be proud of, you got to stick to that. You don't get to have it both ways.
No, absolutely. And we are going to continue down the path of, directionless Calgary Flames hockey once again. And we will be right back after this. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Nick, are you going to be placing any bets this weekend?
Yeah, I'll definitely throw something around just to have some fun on Saturday for sure. Probably throw some hockey overs in the mix. Busy slate on Saturdays typically because, National Day in Canada, so you get a lot more games loaded up. So lots to keep an eye on.
Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around with us here on Locked On Flames as we try to piece any of this together. Subscribe if you're also confused and just want to torture yourself some more. How are you feeling about Chris Tanev?
I still feel like they got gypped. I still feel like they didn't get a great return, and I watched that clip of Conroy on Merrick's show again just to kind of make sure I understood it, and it's just like, dude, do you not understand how this works?
No.
Like, the guy is going to give you a hard time, and when he capitulates on something that's not a great piece, like, sure, maybe the Flames see something other people don't, but on the off chance that everybody else is right and it's just the Flames that are wrong, you got played. It happens to everybody. You're gonna learn. It's unfortunate he's learning at the rest of our expenses, which is kind of the issue at hand. I mean, I jokingly tweeted a few hours ago someone disconnect his phone for a few hours and sit him down and explain how this works, because some of the return for Tanev, picks are great. Eventually, they have to become players, though, and we talk about it all the time. The later that pick is made, the less likely that player has a chance of even making the NHL, let alone being good. And, we're talking about second, third, fourth round picks, which those guys take longer in the incubator. If you take them now, they're probably 3-4 years away from helping you. They probably need AHL time. They have to stay in their developmental league, whether that's abroad or whether that's college or whether that's major junior as an overager. We are a long ways away from something resembling a truly competitive Flames team, and you want as many ticks at the box, as many lotto tickets as you can get. So volume-wise, sure, but what do we have to show for this right now? We've got Kuzmenko and Sharangovich, which useful players for sure, decent NHL players for sure. I still don't think either of those guys is a first liner on a good team. Kuzmenko might be a second liner on a good team, but on a good team, Sharangovich is a third liner.
Yeah. And I don't understand why you would go into a situation like you had 10 years to learn what to do and what not to do. And I'm sure, you took great notes. You said, okay, this is a deal I'm going to learn from. And you said that. You said, I'm not letting these guys walk like Johnny did. Great. That's fine. But you also need to do something productive and, make it a worthwhile return. And I feel like we're just not going in that direction. It's, I don't know. It's like he is buying a car and he's willing to take the first number that they give him for his trade when he could easily squeeze $3,000-$4,000 more out of them.
And he's considering the car's feelings for some reason.
Yeah. Like, who cares? Just in this whole thing with Noah Hannafin, where they're kind of letting him dictate this. Sure. If it was the off season early in this, yes. We are a week away. Put on your big boy pants and deal him. That's it.
What is more valuable to the 2024, 2025, and 2025, 2026 Calgary Flames? Jacob Markstrom's age 35 and 36 seasons, or Alexander Holtz. It's that
Alexander
simple.
Holtz.
It's that simple. At the end of the day, it is that straightforward and simple. If that is not if you're doing your pros and cons list, you're writing it out. What's more likely? This 22-year-old who's underutilized on a good team will eventually break out and get more opportunity with more minutes, or a goalie who is aging keeps playing at an elite level. Sure, maybe Markstrom's got something in there for 2 more seasons, and he's an above-average goalie both of those years. The team in front of him's still not going to be that good, which at the end of the day, you got to think about it in terms of risk tolerance, in terms of what's more likely. That's how I decide. That's how I think about these decisions. What's more likely? The defenseman and the pick they got being useful for making the team that they got for Chris Tanev, or getting a player that's closer to the NHL and only getting one thing in return, being closer to making the NHL. The magic bean strategy at the deadline, it never appeals to me, because there's a reason those teams are giving away the magic beans.
Exactly. And I thought we were going to have to throw this conversation on the back burner for a second, because I saw Elliot Friedman retweet that New Jersey made a trade. And I was like, wait a second, we've got something else to talk about. But no, it is not Jacob Markstrom. And that's unfortunate. I don't get it, especially with a team. And you've said this before. Dallas and Tampa do a really good job scouting. And if they are willing to trade those players, there's probably a reason. They're like, they don't see it. So why are you just taking that and agreeing and being a yes man?
Dallas needs defensemen in their pipeline.
Could have made them work for it.
They did not do well in that return, and I think I don't know if perception of that trade is playing into why Conroy may have changed his tune on Markstrom. But it's worth considering. Some GMs do care what the public thinks about them and how they're received, and there are other organizations with more oversight where there are more chefs in the kitchen that get to have a say in these transactions. I mean, that's part of why Kyle Dubas left Toronto, was he didn't want to have to go to 2 or 3 other people to finalize a trade, to get, permission more or less to finalize a trade. But if it's just you and you're the one making these trades, it's not a great look. And you only get so many cracks at this. I understand it's your first time. If anything, you would think you would be more hesitant on your first time around to make serious moves like this. But instead, they've been pretty deliberate in what they've done so far.
Yeah. And, there's definitely pros and cons to both situations. I mean, I would much rather not be the only fall guy in terms of, okay, this return stinks. Let's all just blame Craig Conroy. Where, like you said, Toronto, there's multiple advisors. You have to ask permission or just to get some sort of, go ahead. But at least maybe sometimes someone will be there to check you and not just say, okay, here you go.
Again, maybe we don't want Dave Nonis advising him. That's also a good point. Yeah. No matter what, I think we're kind of in a bad place at the moment. Like, maybe things change. Maybe they get a good return for Hanifin. Maybe they eventually end up moving Markstrom and they facilitate something like we talked about yesterday. Maybe the Markstrom stuff is out there from the other side to kind of drive a wedge between the Flames and the Devils to make, the Flames and Markstrom, to make the Flames more likely to move him. Maybe that's what's going on here.
Yeah. I mean, for him to come out and just straight up say, like, it should have been handled better from the top, I don't think that's going to do you any favors in the locker room, or not. I'm sure the players understand, but like, with your bosses, I don't know. I guess, that the divide has started.
It's really going to be interesting. We've got a little over a week, a little less than a week now, because we're at 5:45 Eastern as we're recording this, and the deadline I think is 3:00 next Friday. So six days and like 20 something hours to go. Lots of decisions to be made.
Yes, we are down to the wire, folks, and we are going to take a quick break and come back and do a nice little vocab lesson. And please send it to general managers, specifically Craig Conroy. But first, you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seats, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big time savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us today on this fine episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well because, well, it's a nice little support group. We understand. It's a struggle.
The point of sports is not to be happy, it's to be miserable in a group. To quote the sacred text.
We talked about it earlier, but Craig Conroy just kind of laying his cards all out there. Why would that be a smart idea? What strategy? What is his strategy?
I think he's too nice. Like, genuinely, I just think he's too nice of a guy. I think he cares too much about doing right by other people, you know, especially like when they traded Zadorov and when they traded Toffoli last year. The idea of, well, we got to do a trade that's a win for both teams. Well, no, we don't, actually. We don't. The whole point is to get as much as you can without giving up as little as you can. And that gentlemanly stuff is great and all. It sounds nice, but those guys will keep taking your lunch money, and eventually you're going to go hungry if you don't eat. It's really that simple. It's really that straightforward. You know, there's a reason certain teams kept getting calls, you know, when certain general managers were employed in certain places. And same thing with July 1st, you know. Yeah. There's a reason certain agents direct their players towards certain teams on free agency day because they know they're going to get their guys taken care of because that's how certain teams operate. So it's on Conroy to recognize, okay, I may have overplayed my hand here. The player is pissed off. He may not even want to stay anymore, even if we, you know, the relationship might be messed up there, but regardless of what you end up doing. So I think you have to have an honest conversation where you tell the guy, hey, I'm sorry your name got out there. That wasn't my intention. You know, I wouldn't do that. That was from the other side trying to drive a wedge between us. That's how you approach this, is you need to have an honest sit down and say, it's not from our side. That's the Devils wanting to get you really badly. They're trying to make us look bad, so you're more willing to go there, and you don't want to stay here, so we have to give up. We don't get as much back for you because you're a disgruntled player and you don't want to be here. I understand there's a lot of nuance within that. I understand that not everybody cares all that much about rationality at points when it comes to stuff like this, but that would be the best way to diffuse this situation. If I were to make the call, I would tell Markstrom to come in, we'd sit down and have the conversation. We want you here. We also can't be ignorant of the fact we have to look out for what's best for the team. If we can make something happen and send you to a team that has a chance to make the playoffs, maybe go on a run, or definitely will be competitive for the next few seasons. Would you rather that? You know, that's what it comes down to for me. As long as you're honest with the players and they have a decent understanding of what's going on, I don't really care what you tell the public because it doesn't benefit you to tell the public anything.
No, and I feel like, I mean, he should take Jacob Markstrom out to the nicest restaurant in the area and
put it on the team card. It don't matter.
Yep, exactly. They have money to spend. Doesn't go against the cap. Who cares? Just swipe the card. it feels like just a mess. And in, I believe it was Pierre LeBrun's article, he said that Markstrom won't be moved now, or not until the summer, if at all. Why do we need to wait?
Okay, so let me approach this from the Devils' perspective. I was talking with one of my Devils fan friends about this because I wrote something about Timo Meier, and I was really taken aback by how badly under the hood the Devils have performed this year in terms of transition and defense. Their defense is an atrocity, and if they trade for Markstrom right now, that's effectively giving Lindy Ruff a life jacket, even though Lindy Ruff is intentionally trying to drown himself in the middle of the ocean, effectively. So, and the math for the Devils is not to sound like Elliot Friedman, but I don't really like their math. I don't really like their math. The Devils have 23 regular season games remaining. To make the playoffs, they probably need to win 17 of them outright. They probably need to go 16-7 at least. And that would have them at a tie. If the Flyers maintain their current pace, the Flyers are going to finish with 94 points. If the Devils win 16 out of 23, they would finish with 93.9 points, which would round up to 94. So you probably need to win 17 of your final 23. And over the last month, the Devils' goaltending is .898 save percentage. So the math does not work out for the Devils. The only reason you wait to do this trade until the summer is you fire Lindy as soon as the season ends, and then you bring in the new goalie and you try and re-tinker the team a little bit. That's the only reason the Devils wouldn't do this right now. Unless, like, if the Flames are willing to trade Markstrom, they should do this right now because the season isn't over. And worst case, even if you don't make the playoffs, you got him in here and you can start to integrate him like we talk about with the Flames. To have him ramp up into next season. But the issue with that is if they get hot and, they make the playoffs, it'll be a lot harder to fire Lindy Ruff, which they should do regardless, but that's just kind of the way it works.
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, Markstrom's like a child of divorce, but he doesn't know that they're getting divorced yet. I feel really bad for Markstrom. Like, when all of this stuff, like these conversations started, it was very clear that he did not want his name in the headlines. He didn't want any of this. And I think that they did the best they could, Flames wise, because for the longest time we didn't know anything. And then all of a sudden it's all
out there.
Yeah. And it's like right after the Flames supposedly rejected a deal. Why would you think that's coming from the Flames?
That's the thing. And now, based on the reporting we've heard, the Devils are getting to that point of desperation where they're not even asking the Flames to retain money, which, again, may or may not be true. Like we were joking about, I was joking about yesterday, the whole Elias Pettersson was almost a hurricane is like my girlfriend, you don't know my girlfriend, but she lives in Canada. She
goes to a different school.
Yeah, she goes to a different school. That's the type of deal NHL GMs love to do this time of year to sound better at their jobs than they actually are. So we don't know. Like, I try to take things at face value and not be cynical, but you also have to understand where this information is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we say all the time, consider your sources. And I mean, there's a reason why things are getting out. And that's just something to think about as we head into this weekend. The Flames are retiring Kiprusoff's number. We would hate to have one goaltender steal the spotlight from another, but, business carries on regardless. Nick, do you have anything you'd like to add before we wrap up today's show?
Everyone enjoy your weekend. Be safe, all that. Congrats, Kipper. We'll see you guys next week.
Yes. Remember to subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. If you're feeling generous, feel free to throw us a 5-star rating or a nice little review. And we will be back on Monday, the final week, the work week before the trade deadline. So you're going to want to stick around in case Craig Conroy does his job. But until then, we will see you on Monday.